Hi everyone, it's Phase 3 time. You might have noticed in the gradebook I've ratcheted up the points available for Phase 3, whereas Phase 1 and 2 were, I think, worth 5 points apiece. We're going to either 25 or 30 on Phase 3 and Phase 4, so there are quite a few more points available and more risk for not doing things correctly. For the most part in Phase 1, people did very well. I have a few things to address in Phase 1 here in just a second. First, let's look at the requirements for Phase 3. I've got that noted in red font down here. Notice in this paragraph there are no additional requirements to be eligible to share in the matching contribution. However, and here's where Phase 3 starts, a participant must be employed on the last day of the plan year and work at least 1,000 hours to share in the profit sharing. So to summarize, the employees must be eligible for matching, which is the age of 21 and having been employed for a year requirements. Plus, they have to have worked at least 1,000 hours during the current year, in this case 2013. Also notice that the last line down here, if a participant retires, there are no requirements to share in the profit sharing allocation. That's worded awkwardly. This is a real case from a real firm, so I didn't mess with the wording. What that is saying is that if a participant retires, they do not have to meet any of the conditions, presumably age, but we know they have to be 65 here to retire. But the year of employment and having to have worked 1,000 hours during the current year are no longer conditions that have to be met by retirees. So you probably want to have a column that is some type of retirement check. The end result for Phase 3 should be much like Phase 1, an assessment as to whether the employee is eligible per January 1st for profit sharing, and then a second assessment whether each employee is eligible per July 1 for profit sharing. And again, if a participant does retire, then they automatically get to participate in the profit sharing allocation, which we'll do numerically in Phase 4. Here is the solution I generated for Phase 1, with the two columns here being the ones of interest. Does the employee qualify per January 1? Does the employee qualify per July 1? Notice I used some conditional formatting here. We'll talk about that in a second. The two biggest problems with Phase 1 per the students' submissions that I looked at this morning were, one, a failure to externalize some data. I'm not too concerned about the days in the year, but the age and the work requirements being sent off to a separate cell, so that if, for instance, in 2014 the CEO decides that the age is now going to be 22 because we're giving out too much matching and profit sharing, I can change that one cell, and all the formulae that use age as part of their calculation will automatically change down through here. So when I say to externalize data, it means to take anything that you might want to change in the future out of the main calculation area and set it off in a separate cell, so you can change just that one cell. The other thing people had trouble with was the years of service for Larry. A number of people used 365.25 for the years of service. I mentioned it was important to add the 2.25 when you're doing longer assessments, for instance for the age, where somebody's age is going to span a number of leap years, so that 0.25 is used to account for those leap years, one every 4 years. But when you're doing just the last year, 365 days is probably the way to go. There are a number of other ways to do these date different calculations, including a date diff actual formula. I haven't had much success, and I've noticed students haven't had a great deal of success with the various other formulas. I always come back to just this raw one date minus the other date divided by 365.25 or 365. But notice I suggested in a previous illustration somewhere that conditional formatting can be extremely useful. And notice that I've highlighted some numbers that are close to the assessment. Let's do another one for the age over here so you can see how that works. If I highlight the entire area and I go to the Home tab up here and hit Conditional Formatting, and I want to highlight cell rules that are, say, between, since my interest on the age is whether they're 21 or not, I want to pick up maybe those employees that are close to 21. So let's do between 19 and 22, and then I can go back in and check, and I'll just leave this, the default's light red fill with dark red text. I guess I can switch it to, let's do green fill with dark green text. Hit OK, and notice it's brought out the fact that Ryan just turned 19 as of July 1, still well underneath the condition to qualify for matching, but it allows me to see employees, and I probably need to create an employee who just turned barely 21 as of one of these two dates. That's my note up here. Make that age assessment a little bit more interesting. But when I did that conditional formatting for one over here, it brought out that Christopher fell just short and brought my attention to that, and that Larry just did qualify at 365 days. Some of you found it at 365.25. He did not qualify. But if you do some conditional formatting, then that may lead you to then test Larry by hand. And if we scroll over, I believe Larry started work, yes, July 1st of 2012. So as of June 30th of 2013, Larry has in fact worked for a year and does qualify per July 1st. Again, for phase 3, you want the same type of scenario. You can do this in one column. You're going to need one of 3 different results. Either they qualify per January 1, they qualify per July 1, or they do not qualify. But I think, separating them in 2 columns is somewhat useful. And you'll see that the other 2 columns I have over here, employee qualifies on either date and their July 1st qualifier only, can be helpful in the phase 4 calculation also. I want to show you some conditional formatting taken to the extreme here. If I highlight this area of cells and hit conditional formatting and looked at manage rules, this is a project I did for a firm that's supposed to remain unnamed. But notice I have conditional formatting, whereas if the day turns out to be Wednesday, this firm wanted Wednesday to be colored blue, Thursday to be colored gold, and so on, Friday white. So I set up conditional formatting. It's actually a series of conditional formats where if cell A6 in this case over here is Wednesday, it'll automatically color code this series of cells blue, and then so on down through all the color spectrum there. Also, there's a pretty fancy nested if statement in here. This first day is hand entered, and that's the first day of the month, and then all of the rest of the days working up are automatically entered using this type of formula up here. And this says, this is a fancy nested if statement. If A36 down here happens to be Sunday, then enter Monday in this cell A35. Otherwise, execute this next if statement, and the next if will check and see if A36 was Monday. And if that's true, then enter Tuesday. Otherwise, execute another if until you've satisfied all the potential days that could appear in A36 down here. But conditional formatting, nested ifs, 2 very powerful Excel functions that I would like to see more people use in phase 3 and phase 4, if you would. Appreciate your time. Good luck on phase 3.